Okay, welcome everybody. This is Debbie Mayberry with National Kitchen and Bath Association. You're here for the Spoiler Alert Kitchens Waste Food webinar with Paula Kennedy, who's a certified master kitchen and bath designer. She's principal and designer of Timeless Kitchen Design. And today's session comes to you generously sponsored by the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation. And we have Christine Whitmore with us right now who's going to speak to you all about that. Christine, if you're there, please let us know a little bit more about that organization.
Great. Thanks very much, Debbie. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NKBA webinar series, and particularly to today's session. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation to thank you for participating. CTEF is committed to professional development for tile installers, and that's why we support the NKBA webinar series and those who take continuing education so very seriously. And we're particularly excited about the theme of sustainability. And that's because ceramic and porcelain tile are truly sustainable materials. And when you combine that with installation by the best of the best ceramic tile installers who meet the requirements of qualified labor, the resulting installation is the ultimate in sustainability. It's not only beautiful, but it is sure to withstand the test of time while addressing the functional needs of those using the space. It does full justice to your vision as a design professional. I'm going to touch just a little bit more on qualified labor, the Certified Tile Installer Program, and CTEF itself. So qualified labor refers to having truly the most qualified professional perform the specified scope of work rather than basing the decision on the lowest price. In the case of tile, these are the tile installers who, like you, are committed to their craft, they believe in professional development, and they take the time to stay current with the latest materials and methods. Because tile is a permanent finish, the lowest bid should not be the driving factor, but rather who is most qualified to perform the scope of work specified. In fact, this is so critical that language now exists to aid the architect, the specifier, and the designer in the preparation of job specifications. This language is now a part of the Tile Council of North America handbook, and it's also included in the Avitru, formerly ARCOM master spec. The CTI designation identifies the professional installer who's reached a level of proficiency to independently and consistently produce a sound tile installation that displays good workmanship using tile industry standards and methods, along with time-tested, proven best practices that are in place in the United States. The CTI program is the only third-party assessment of tile experience and knowledge, and it's recognized by the tile industry in the U.S. And you can locate certified tile installers by using the CTEF website zip code locator. The Ceramic Tile Education Foundation, which sponsors the CTI program, is supported by all segments of the ceramic tile industry. You can find a lot more information on our website, ceramictilefoundation.org. And I thank you very much for your time and enjoy today's session.
Well, thank you, Christine. And Paula, if you're there, we're ready to get started with your session.
Great. Good morning, everyone. If you're on the West Coast, and if you're on the East Coast, good afternoon. Your afternoon is just starting. Thank you for being here. Debbie told me that we've got a great number of you that were really interested in this topic. And Christine, thank you so much for sponsoring this month. And I'm glad that this is such a great fit with the sustainable design topic for April. So I will be asking questions periodically throughout, just to make sure you're all awake. And they'll typically just be yes/no questions, or maybe raise your hands if I kind of get a sense of where everybody's at out there. To get things started today, thank you again, Debbie, for the introduction and for NKBA for offering these to our members. When I said spoiler alert, hey, kitchens waste food, how many of you were like, yeah, no, you're going to go through the checklist in your head, and all these things that we employ already in the kitchens, that it's all about preserving food, right? I really think that, yes, we're good at storing food, but I really think we've lost the art of preservation. And I, this is a personal, I'm really excited about this topic because it's really personal. I really am sick and tired of tossing out food. Sorry, I have to remember to change my slide there. um, so our goals, our objectives today that I would like for us to cover and for you to take away today, a lot of this is going to be very personal. This is, we all in our individual lives need to learn these new tips and tricks and change the way we do things. And then let's educate our families and let's educate our clients. And then I want this to make us better designers and professionals in the industry that we can all work together, right? All of us can do, every little bit helps. So today I want to make sure that you learn with these tips and tricks that I'm going to offer us today, we can save money, we can save time, we can reduce landfill waste that goes to the landfill, and we can eat healthier. These are my four, the pretty lofty goals that I want to impart to you today. So there we go. So to recap that, we're going to talk about how do we reduce the landfill impact? How to reduce cost of replacing wasted produce? Reducing time to replace that produce that you just tossed out, reduce time. How do we increase the flavor enjoyment? Increase the nutrition? Let's increase the space in your refrigerator. How about that? I bet you all would love to have some more space in your refrigerator. Let's also increase our countertop space. Now that one could be debatable by the time we get to the end of the conversation today, and we'll talk about that again. Let's empower the consumer and support healthy eating options. So I like to begin any of my topics and things that I'm personally interested in, I go right to research. So I'm going to give us some definitions to start us off today that make sure we're all on the same page. So according to a 2002 study, and I did see some new studies out there as well, but still very similar statistics. In the United States, on average, they're throwing out about 470 pounds of food each year. A fourth of that is made up of fresh produce. Realistically, if we're storing things properly, this produce should last a couple weeks in our refrigerator. But if you're like me, I just was tired of throwing away my spinach, throwing away my bananas, or you save your bananas for banana bread, right? But I finally decided, okay, I need to learn. Somebody in my life I heard said, don't put your bananas next to your apples. And I'm like, wait, what? Say that again? How come I didn't know this? Why didn't anybody tell me this? And as I started researching, the impact of this waste that's going to the landfill, one of the words we're going to talk about, you're going to hear a bit today, is methane, is one of the largest elements in the landfill that creates landfill gas, about 45 to 60%. And that's a naturally occurring gas. Huge part of it is produced by a bacterial decomposition, which is coming from natural, like food, garden waste, textiles, wood, and paper, that we all have a lot of control over how it's disposed of. Hopefully most of you are familiar with the greenhouse gas emissions and how that happens. And ethylene is the other word I really want to talk about today and make sure that you understand what that is. It is basically when fruit ripens, when produce ripens, it off gases. Produce off gases as it ripens. And that is what's adding to the methane that's going into the greenhouse gas emissions that we want to really learn how can we reduce that. And then we're not tossing out food that we want to enjoy in the meantime, right? So again, methane, specifically from human activities, it is a colorless, odorless gas that occurs naturally and is among the most potent of the greenhouse gases. So these are my little definitions for you. If you're like me, we're in the kitchen and bath industry. We're a little right brain, we're a little left brain, and I think a lot of us like knowing the nuts and bolts to the why. And I think our clients need all of us, if we're going to start changing our behavior, we need to know why. What's the benefit and what's the negative impact, and why do I want to change this? So the next few slides here, I want to talk a little bit more about food waste. This is a great website. If you're all taking notes out there, I believe Debbie is going to be sharing the recording as well. SaveTheFood.com, fantastic website, tons of tips and tricks and ways to participate in changing our behavior. We can all make a difference. Globally, we globally are responsible for 4 billion tons of food wasted a year that could have been eaten. If the US cuts that waste by just 5%, that'd be enough to feed 4 million Americans. I mean, some of the statistics are, you really need to let these soak in. I mean, if we just change a little bit of our behavior, it has a huge impact. And taking precautionary measures, understanding food storage, and hopefully some of the things I'm going to tell you about today will really make a big difference. Here's some other ways of looking at it. A 4-person family loses, remember I said I'm going to save you some money, loses $1,500 a year on wasted food. That's a raise, right? For some of us. But look at some of the foods that they're tossing out. These are the ones that are tossed out the most, from seafood, produce, meat and milk and grains. It's really interesting to see. I know I have been conditioned that if there's a little bit of brown on it, you know, it's not good. I'm pretty picky, and I'm having to totally change how I do things. So we also need to see the bigger picture. It's not just I'm wasting that banana or tossing that egg. Trashing one egg wastes 55 gallons of water, because if you step back and look at the big picture, it's more than just that egg. It was the land that the chickens were on. It was the care of the chickens. It was, you know, and then all the way to travel, you know, delivery and travel, the entire footprint, right? The entire footprint. Wasting food wastes everything: water, fuel, labor, money, and love. So it's important for us to see the bigger picture. It'll help us begin to make changes. I'm going to be giving you a few tips and tricks along the way as well that you can jot down. Here's one. Here's your first tip and trick today. Anything that has a hard peel that you remove doesn't need to be organic. So a lot of us, I know myself, from purchasing organic produce as much as I can, because I want to support some of the local farmers and whatnot. But if it's a banana peel that doesn't have the chemicals on it, you're pulling that off anyway and not eating that. So that's some things are really important to buy organic, and some things you don't need to as much. Here's a few of the top reasons why people said they threw food away. They worry about food poisoning. They only want to eat the freshest. I fall into that category. But I've been so conditioned. Let's see, the other top ones with the red dots here. Food breaks down in the landfill. It doesn't matter. It's all taken care of itself by nature. I don't have to worry about it, right? My individual actions wouldn't make a difference. What kind of difference would it make if just me? Why? I can't make a difference, so I'm not even going to try. And the last one there, I don't have enough time to prevent food waste, but I have enough time to go back to the grocery store 3 times a week. So thank you for indulging me with our definitions and the how and the behind the scenes, why this is important as we move on. So we're going to shift now into how can we help our clients and ourselves too. So as I was beginning, remember I said, somebody said, oh, don't put your bananas next to your apples and whatnot. And I said, wait, what? I called my mom. Like, how come you didn't tell me this? And she's like, oh, yeah, we used to have a cellar. And so we're going to talk about some of these things. Do you remember 20 years ago when I got back into not not back into the, when I started in the industry, sorry, 20 years ago, I remember these wicker baskets in these, cute traditional kitchens. And when I got in the business, it was, they were a little kitschy. They were a little like, oh, let's just get rid of these. They're just for looks, right? You know what? They had a purpose. How many of you, here's your first yes and no question. How many of you, either your parents or grandparents, or that you, or maybe you, remember having a cellar? Having a cellar or a larder, a place that was dark, cool, usually in the basement. Give me a yes, no. How many of you remember these? So my grandmother's house had one of these rooms in the basement under the stairs, and it was down around all of the concrete foundation. It was dark and cool, and she canned and she did all of these things that I feel like it was only 2 generations ago. Only 2 generations ago. And there's so many of these skills and these methods that I think we've lost, that I think there's a shift now, and we'll talk about that, that we need to recapture. Only 2 generations ago had these. And so it made me start thinking about how can we reinvent, so to speak, in our current kitchens, a similar environment or a similar way of storing food like this again. So yeah, I see quite a few of you. Quite a few of you remember these. So we're going to shift. We've talking a lot about food. Let's talk a little bit more about food, produce, specifically produce. Starting off, how many of you, and I'm giving you the answer, so I could have done this as a question answer. Refrigeration, let's start there. The temperature of a refrigerator. Now the FDA recommends, and I want you to remember this because we're going to talk about this a little bit later, between 32 and 40 degrees. That's what the FDA recommends. Now, Energy Star, which we are all very familiar with in our industry, recommends between 35 and 38. And that is specifically about reducing energy use. So we're reducing energy usage because we're narrowing the temperature range. But there's a lot of produce in the FDA recommendations between 32 and 40. That's a wider range than whereas most foods that need to be refrigerated are still safe for eating. So let's remember that, 32 to 40 versus 35 to 38. All right, so I like to remember the number one purpose of your refrigerator is to slow the growth of bacteria, is to slow it. You can never stop it. Now, we can try to stop it. We can put it in the freezer. It would actually stop bacteria from growing. Many of us use the freezer for that purpose. It will stop, but it would also, because it's freezing them solid, right? But if we could freeze everything, that would be great, right? But a lot of food doesn't like to be frozen. Lettuce wouldn't come out very well. Your strawberries don't come out very well. And it just takes a long time to thaw our food. So really, it's not very practical, is it? We are going to, and I really want you to remember, temperature, humidity, and ethylene. Temperature, humidity, and ethylene are the things that we are going to talk about the most with produce storage. Most people store their produce either in the refrigerator or on the countertop. But did you know that there's an enormous amount of produce that should be stored someplace else, somewhere in the middle? Too cold, too hot, just right. We definitely don't want a bowl of fruit sitting in the sunshine on your kitchen countertop. But it should probably be somewhere in that 40 to 50. And again, remember, the FDA said 32 to 40, and Energy Star is 35 to 38. There's a lot of produce that doesn't belong down there. Did I skip one? Nope, good. So here's an example. Here's an example of some of my favorite produce. It's pretty easy to go online and Google and find these lists. Some of my favorite items, asparagus, berries, spinach, yes, those should be in your refrigerator. Most of my favorite things, the avocados and peppers and potatoes and things like that, need to be in that 40 to 50. And bananas and tomatoes should really be, without getting overheated sitting in the sunshine, they are completely fine in the warmer zone. You're not going to be able to read this. Try to do a screen grab if you like, but it's pretty easy to go out and Google and find lists like these. There are produce lists. And what's fantastic about this one is it's giving us the ideal temperature range, the ideal humidity, because remember we said temperature, humidity, and ethylene. It gives you the approximate life storage if it's stored correctly. And then it tells you which ones produce ethylene, which ones are sensitive, whether they like moisture or whatnot. This is a fantastic list, and you can find a list like this really easily online. And as we're thinking about produce storage, there's really the four zones that most produce prefers. Cold, dry, cold, moist, cool, dry, or cool, moist. Produce is not done growing and living. Produce continues. It's a living item. Just because it's plucked off the bush or wherever it came off of, or the tree, doesn't mean that it's not done. So we need to continue to give that produce the environment, the living environment that it needs to be healthy and have the right flavor and have the most nutrients for when we're ready to enjoy them, right? Temperature, humidity, and ventilation. I keep hitting the wrong button for advancing my slide. Temperature. So, zeroing in on temperature, did you know some fruits and vegetables are actually sensitive? There are sensitive children. They're sensitive to chill injury. Oranges, which I had no idea. I tend to like my fruit cold when I eat them, but really an orange is not going to last as long as it can if it's in the refrigerator, if it's being kept too cold. So what I often will do is I will put a banana or my orange in the refrigerator that morning or the night before when I know I'm going to need it for lunch or breakfast, because I do like them cold, but instead of storing them in there continuously. Many like raspberries and berries, they want to be stored as cool as possible but without freezing. Humidity. How many of you are, my cilantro wilts and my spinach or lettuce, as soon as one of these items start wilting, it is going to lead to spoilage. Here's a great list of some of my favorites that prefer higher humidity or lower humidity. And here's another free tip for you. Be sure in your refrigerators to cover your liquid containers. Cover your liquid items in the refrigerator. Uncovered, if they're uncovered, it's releasing the moisture, making the compression work harder, but then for the items that need lower humidity, it's causing too much humidity. Two of my favorites, the apples and bananas. Here's another question for you. Get ready with your yes-no questions or your yes-no answers. How many of you right now in your home have a bowl of fruit on your countertop or in one of those hanging wire baskets or somehow out together? How many of you have your bananas and apples together? So these are great lists. Some produce produces ethylene. Some are sensitive. So if I'm putting my apple with my banana, my apple is producing ethylene and it's causing my banana to ripen too fast. And I'm pretty picky with my bananas, so I like a little green on them still. So if there's only one takeaway today that I can have you start changing your behavior at home and then teach your clients, separate your bananas and apples, please. Just separate them. They don't like each other. So again, there's a list of some of my favorites, some of my favorite items. So yes, just say no. Just say no to that fruit bowl. Say no to those wire baskets hanging in the sunshine because that's usually where we're hanging them, right? And the bananas out on that little hanger, just say no to these. This is not the proper place for storing your produce, and it's taking up countertop space. Ugh. And they don't, this bowl sometimes looks really pretty and beautiful and bountiful right when you get home from the store. But it doesn't usually stay looking nice very long. All right, so we are going to shift. How many of your refrigerators look like this? How many of your clients' refrigerators look like this? So I'm a little OCD and I like, things organized. And I think a huge part of what we do in this industry is organizing storage, pantries and rollouts and whatnot. Well, there's a lot of items in this refrigerator that don't belong in this refrigerator. We can free up space in your refrigerator, give our clients more room in their existing refrigerators or their new refrigerator that you're getting them. We can give them a lot more space. So let's go through some of this. Now, we just talked about that a lot of produce needs to be separated. Well, if you go and look in your refrigerator right now, you may not have enough bins to separate everything that needs to be separated. I was always a little skeptical about the refrigerator bins, and I sometimes assume that things don't really work the way they're supposed to. And there's a little humidity lever on one drawer and whatnot. I'm like, yeah, those don't really work. In most of the brands that we're learning about within KBA that are members and the manufacturers that we're dealing with here, most of, if not all, those drawers do actually work. Those levers, those controls on those drawers actually work. We just need to learn how to use them properly. But you know what I would love? I would love more drawers. I would love not just big, wide, deep drawers where there's no divisions. I want like 4 to 5, maybe even 6 separated drawers. And if you can't do that, there's great third-party bins, which this image is showing that you can get to separate items. And actually, even separating things like this gives things more space in there. So here are a few. I've got 2 or 3 things that you can do in your own refrigerators that will help extend the lifespan. I use these green bags every day. I use them on all my produce, whether they're in the refrigerator or on the countertop. It either holds the ethylene in from those apples, or it's protecting my bananas from the ethylene of other things that are in the house or in the refrigerator next to them. So these are fantastic. You can find them online, and the green liners. Everything is about absorbing or protecting the ethylene. Here's another one that I have been using this last few years, the Berry Breeze. Just put some batteries in and it's setting it in the back of the refrigerator, although it's taking up a little space in the refrigerator, but I've been using it. And it's a filter. It's an ethylene filter. And we'll get to, because of course our industry is catching up, and there are many refrigeration units now that are including this ethylene filter. So yay. But if you don't have one of those yet, there are some tools you can use. Here's another free tip. Remember, I said we want to separate the ethylene producing or the ethylene sensitive. But you know what? I often go to the store, I go to my Trader Joe's, I get my avocados, and none of them are ripe. But I want one tonight, or I know I'm going to want one this weekend. If you want to help your avocado ripen faster, put it in a brown paper bag with an apple. And then as soon as it is soft enough, put it in the refrigerator till you're ready to eat it. I love that one. I love my avocados. Another free tip, did you know you can actually regrow your lettuce, especially this kind of lettuce? There are other types that you can't, but if it's got the stalk like this, it will grow. I've done this several times and it actually works. And I can get another salad or two, or lettuce for tomatoes, lettuce for sandwiches out of that before actually tossing the core of it. So that actually does work. All right. Remember the wicker baskets that I really didn't like 20 years ago when I got in the business? They had a purpose, right? So our root cellar produce has a whole other set of needs. Potatoes prefer cool, dark, a lot of ventilation. But if they're too cold, the starches actually start making them unpleasantly sweet. Onions do not like the cold, and the humidity makes them mold and mushy. So let's think about where we can put more of those, bringing the bins back, okay? But not in maybe the kitschy kind of cutesy way that they used to be. There are amazing, beautiful options out there now for the root cellar, the root items, the root vegetables. These dark brown ones are beautiful in a really traditional kitchen. And this, I always prefer, if you think back to the cellars and larders, they were in cool, dark places, right? So I prefer base cabinets on an exterior wall, well ventilated. That metal cabinet is well ventilated. Here's some that are contemporary. See, so even if you're in this one actually is behind a cabinet door as well. Contemporary bins work too. Or big, deep ones down below are a fantastic new way. But you know what? What if we had produce refrigeration that was in that moderate temperate zone? And these do exist, and I think that we are going to see a lot more of these options coming out. These are not as cold as typical refrigerators. Now let's talk about the pantry. So the pantry for me is, again, my OCD. I get to play. I get to, organize. Again, for food preservation, if we're putting things in containers like this, the food is going to last a lot longer and it's also easier to stack and organize your spaces than with all of the boxes that are crushed from, kids, and they're all different sizes and they don't stack really well. So going to the container store is like Christmas for me. I think it's one of my happiest places on earth. These drawers are fantastic too. It doesn't always have to go in a walk-in pantry or a tall floor-to-ceiling cabinet. We can rethink where the pantry goes, especially in a lot of contemporary designs where you're not doing the floor-to-ceiling cabinets and you're not doing wall cabinets. We need to rethink the location. Another free tip, remember I said I'm going to save you some space in that refrigerator? There are a lot of items that do not need to be in the refrigerator and actually, take away the flavor and whatnot. Your breads, most breads don't need to be in there. Some might. I often put mine in the freezer and just take out what I need as I go. Coffee can dry out and not, your honey does not need to be in there. There's a lot of items that don't need to be stored in there unless the label says refrigerate. Always read your labels. Remember the bread boxes? I love this one. It's pretty cute. I live in a beautiful old house here in Seattle, and they have these metal drawer boxes, and one of them has the lid for the bread box. But this one with the bamboo lids that's inset into the countertop, fantastic. A lot of our members, hardware accessory members, have these things, and a lot of our cabinet companies that we work with still offer these. And I think we can get back to using some of these tools. So why is a lot of this becoming more, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that's beginning to think about this and beginning to, being more aware and kind of reconnecting with the past. And we can say that it's, the millennials they're kind of going retro, and I often kind of hate saying retros do or millennials do XYZ, and then there's millennials in the room, and I'm like, what do you think? Are you doing this? And yes, they are. They are, and I am, and many of us. Going back to the farmers markets, I go on a daily basis, and I'm going to jump back a slide. I'm actually beginning to think about how I'm freezing and saving food, and we need different storage methods and different ways of taking care of of the way that we're changing our lives again. Having the gardens in the back, another free tip for reducing landfill. How many of you have heard of the Imperfect Produce Company? It's not in every city yet. So at the beginning, one of the statistics I gave you was about how much food goes to the landfill that could have been eaten. There is an enormous amount of produce that doesn't even make it to the grocery store because it's imperfect. I've said I am very conditioned. I sort through that produce bin and get the most perfect apple, and oh, there's a spot on that, but tomato, put it back. I have been seriously conditioned. So I receive a box of produce every other week, and it's all, perfect. Nothing is spoiling. It's not about the age of the produce. It was too big, too small. It, had a bump on the outside, but the inside fruit is perfect. So I have been receiving produce like this for the last year and a half or so. So I am saving that produce from going to the landfill. It's also less expensive, and I can get organic less expensive as well. So I feel like I'm doing my part, doing a little thing for the landfill. So there are many people that are now thinking about dehydration and freeze drying. I just worked with a client, millennials, that had just bought a dehydration unit and had something set up out in the garage that they were doing this with. Vacuum sealing, not just the bags, but I love the containers that are hooked up to the vacuum seal as well. Again, maximizes storage in the cabinet and preserves food longer. Now, a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, around KBIS, Kitchen and Bath Industry Show, I started seeing the vacuum sealing in built-in appliances, which really fascinates me. I hate having things on the countertops, but if we can build them in, I think that's going to be a great idea. I think there's a lot changing in this segment, in this topic. When I first started researching, there were not a lot of options and ideas. But now there are a lot of, some of these are prototypes, some of these are already on the market. And it's a spin on that fruit bowl, but it's filtering ethylene, it's protecting it from with humidity and temperature, it's controlling its environment so that that produce on your countertop actually can last longer now. So, like I said, a couple of these are prototypes. Well, 3 of them are, 2 of them are actually product that actually exists today. So we can't talk about the kitchen and produce and food without also talking about light and heat management. Now, heat management is really important for that produce that you may or may not still have sitting on your countertop, right? It doesn't need to be sitting in the sun all day. Now, we all love the light, bright kitchens, and we need that. But if you know that your client is storing that produce on the countertop and they're not going to change, let's give them some blinds. Let's give them some ways to do that still efficiently. However, what if they also love to grow their own herbs and they may not have a space outside to do that? We've seen these for years, these deep window ledges. Now, I am not a fan of those deep planter, garden windows. I'm not a fan of those. If we can do something like that that's a little bit more updated design-wise, but let's give them that window ledge there. If they're growing herbs and want to have things there, let's give them that and put, countertop, solid surface on that ledge there so that it protects the water. However, this is also hitting the market. I attend the Smart Kitchen Summit in Seattle for the last, have been attending it for the last 3 years. And the conversation that they're having with the hydroponic growing units and different things, they used to be really large. There was a company I saw here locally in Seattle a couple years ago. I think they may, well, yeah, they were at KBIS a couple years ago. It was a larger refrigeration unit. But this little guy here in the middle sits on your countertop underneath your wall cabinet. Great for herbs, small leafy greens. So again, these are items that might be fighting for countertop space, but the market is really growing, and I think we need to make sure that we're ready for it. And I've mentioned this a few times now. There's a lot of these new products that are and methods that are hitting the market in small appliances. And at first I thought, oh, come on, I am constantly as a designer trying to clear the countertops for my clients. I hate the clutter and I know it wears on them too, whether they know it or not. So like clear that countertop, let's build it in. But what I've learned in working with some of these manufacturers and going to the Smart Kitchen Summit is it's quicker and easier to bring an idea to market in a small item that can sit on your countertop. It's more accessible to the market. It can be tested and find out, is there an interest to it? And so what you will start finding now is some of these new countertop appliances, these new features that are being integrated into the appliance industry, into the built-in appliances like that vacuum seal that I saw. So we do need to be designing space on the countertops for all these new, that dehydration and for all these new ways of, preserving and working with food. So the other disruption, which I just touched on, of course, is that it's going to be coming into refrigeration. I'm already seeing it, even just in the last year. I'm already seeing hitting the refrigeration. They're filtering ethylene, and they're better. They're designing the drawers, the produce drawers better. So I would prefer to have it built in. I would prefer to know that I can control the temperature of some of those drawers, and especially filtering out that ethylene, because I may not be able to retrofit my kitchen and change everywhere all of that produce goes. But if I use the refrigeration that I have better, and if they're produced better, that can help solve the problem for me. I don't know if any of you have any experience with designing and working with restaurants, or have, ever worked at a restaurant before. What's fascinating to me that I'm seeing hitting the market, there are a lot of methods. Like sous vide is all the rage right now, right? Well, that started in the restaurant industry. There are a lot of things that restaurants are constantly concerned about: fragrance, consistency, colors, nutritional properties, and how do they do that on a larger scale. And it's fascinating to me to see those methods coming to the residential world now. One of them is about chilling food, and you're going to see in some of the manufacturers in our industry that are using these terms: instant cool or blast chill or express chill. It's all about chilling that food in a short amount of time. As they're saying, just over an hour you can chill food properly, instead of 15 to 20 hours to get it chilled. So if you're coming home from the market and it's been in the car for a while, you need to chill it really fast to help save it. Or for wine and other drinks, you can really get it to precise temperatures. You will see these, and some of you probably already have seen these in some of our refrigeration that's hitting the market. Flash freeze. So this is definitely from the restaurant world. You will see terms blast freeze, shock freeze, and flash freeze. That system can freeze food within 2 hours, and it locks in the moisture and texture. And it's going to keep it fresh longer, versus your normal refrigerator can take up to 20 hours to fully freeze food. You'll actually be able to freeze items that you never thought you could before with a flash freeze system. And thawing, safely thawing. There's one manufacturer in particular that I know of that has a thaw drawer, and I'm sure there are others. Express thaw or controlled thaw. We want to thaw it safely instead of having it out on the countertop thawing, which thawing it in the refrigerator can take up to a full day. In water, you have to change the water every 30 minutes, or in the microwave, it's going to cook it, right? So we need some safe ways of thawing. You will start seeing this in appliances coming up. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I ran across a company that started doing, and there's more now, not just this one, but that are doing these as built-in units, like that vacuum seal that I saw. And this one does the blast chilling and the freezing and the controlled thawing. And you're going to see a lot more of these hitting the market. In fact, the last 2 years, I saw the installed vacuum seal in a number of manufacturers had this. And yeah, I could probably give you a list if you emailed me later. There's a lot more that are going to be doing these built in. So it made me happy. Don't have to put things on the countertop. So we're beginning to wrap up our session today, and we will have question and answer time. But as we start thinking about the future and start thinking about how we're all kind of shifting, and everyone, the biggest question is, what's the future of, our kitchens, and how is design going to change in the next, 10, 15, 20 years? And we have an amazing amount of experts in our industry, in our field. And about 3 to 6 months ago, I saw this article in the KBB magazine that we think in the future, there very well could be no pantries in future kitchens because people are shopping every day and they're getting fresh food every day, whether it's delivered to their homes. Now, this is probably a lot more likely for people in urban living situations that are living downtown and whatnot. They're not having as big kitchens, may not be as big. So that's an interesting concept, and I can't say any of these things are all or nothing. It's going to be interesting to see the segment that falls into this. Some of you may know Susan. And her quote here, a home kitchen in the future may have a sous vide appliance, convection steam oven, a quick freezer or vacuum sealer, all about preserving the quality of food and reducing the impact to the landfill. So this is a little future, sci-fi for you here. That may be coming in our future. It's a prototype. I did see it, a physical version of it. It's narrower than a refrigerator. It's narrower and less depth than a refrigerator. But this gel, you can put produce in there and it kind of vacuum seals it and separates it from food. So it's a little sci-fi for me. I don't know, the gel is like, gel and my food, I don't know. But what you need to know is our industry, our manufacturers in our industry, they are forward thinking and they are working really hard because they know this is a national and global issue with our food, and they are working really hard to come up with new ways to address this issue in our industry. I would love it, and maybe I need to work with somebody to create it. I would personally love a produce app, because even though I'm kind of geeking out on, okay, my avocados go here and my bananas go here, and I constantly still, there's so much to learn. I just wish I could say, Alexa, where do I store my bananas? Where do I store my spinach? And I think this is going to be an easy addition to a lot of the features that we're seeing on some of the appliances that you're seeing out there. They may give us lifespan, like, oh, you bought your bananas 2 days ago. They should last 4 more days. Be sure and eat them before they waste. I think that would be fantastic. I could use one of those right now. So earlier I also said, and we are wrapping up here, Earlier, I also said, I'm going to help you eat healthier. So, to recap on why I think I'm going to help you eat healthier, is if we're helping that produce last longer, and if we're storing it appropriately, you and your kids and your families are going to have that option to eat instead of, okay, the banana is too old, I'm not going to eat that, I'll have the chips instead. So that's my way of kind of wrapping that, the healthy options here for ourselves. We're not having to throw it out. We have that produce ready for us to eat when we need it. So I'm going to end us now. Uh, we've got great amount of time here for question and answers. So I thank you, NKBA. Thank you, Christine, and for sponsoring April's CEUs this month. And thank you all for your participation. I hope you got some little nuggets to take away that you can start using today and educate your family and educate your clients. And it just, build momentum. All of us can do something to help save the landfill, save the banana. All right, Debbie, let's open it up for question and answers. And I know many of you are experts in the field too. Many of you probably have content and information that, oh yeah, this refrigerator does this, and you may know of some products already that you could share with the group. But let's take questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Paula, for sharing your time and your expertise today. And thanks once again to Christine Whitmore and to the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation for sponsoring today's session. So we're opening it up to questions, and I'm just wondering if anyone has any questions for Paula. She's here for about another 10 minutes, and we'd be happy to take them. So if you want to put them into the chat, I'll be happy to read them back to Paula and see if she has some good answers for us. Lots of people, by the way, Paula, are thanking you. It was a fascinating presentation. Some are saying that they won't put their tomatoes with their bananas anymore.
Good, good, good. Right on.
That this was very eye-opening.
Mhm,
Lots of great information that you shared today. So I'm still looking for some questions. We're happy to, um,
mhm,
answer any that you may
mhm.
have. Paula spent a lot of time, it looks like, researching this topic, and I really found it interesting about that gel refrigerator. Never
I
seen
know.
anything like that
Yeah.
before. Uh,
It's wonderful to see a lot of the large appliance manufacturers are beginning to incorporate some of these methods, which is wonderful. So, mhm.
Great. Any questions then out there that you would like to put out there? Let's see.
I
Green
usually
leafy
run
item.
I
Oh,
usually
I'm
run
sorry.
long and don't give enough time for questions. So,
Oh, here's
ask
one.
away.
Okay, something from Cynthia. She says, for green leafy items, is there a special way to store them other than the drawer provided in a fridge?
So, my cilantro, I love cilantro. And I have started when I bring it home from the store, I kind of cut the ends and I put them in a little glass of water, almost like a flower. And actually, I keep them out on the countertop. So it depends on what type of lettuce, what type of leafy green it is. They're all very unique. You could definitely, hey, Google parsley. How do I store parsley? Google, iceberg lettuce. How do I store iceberg lettuce? They're all going to be different and unique. And it was overwhelming to me at the beginning, and sometimes it still is. There's so much to learn, but just start with your favorite items. That's what I just started with my apples and bananas. And then I made a list of, okay, avocados. Okay, I can learn that one. And tomatoes, learn that one. And then I just kept layering on all of my favorite things. I don't have to learn it all, just learn my favorite ones.
Okay, great. So then there's a question. Someone wants to know that you had mentioned a show that you go to.
Mhm.
Think it's out in your area where you get a lot of this information. What was the name of the show again, please?
Yes, Smart Kitchen Summit. Smart Kitchen Summit in Seattle, and it's in October every year. It's a 2 or 3 day event, and it's phenomenal. And actually, I've been volunteering with him the last few years because he really has not tapped into the kitchen and bath design segment very well yet. His background is in the tech and the products that are bringing new products to market, and inventors and investors, and but every year there's a lot of our appliance manufacturers that are in attendance there. But it's an amazing cross section. You get to see prototypes and things that are hitting the market, and you get to have a voice. I sat down with one company that had this countertop unit, and I asked him, well, is that going to fit on the countertop underneath the wall cabinet? And he looked at me funny. And I'm like, yeah, we should be talking. We should all be talking so that I can help sell this thing if I can fit it in the kitchen. So you can look it up online, Smart Kitchen Summit, October every year in Seattle.
Great. I put that information out there in the chat so that they know about that. That is interesting that someone wasn't thinking about the cabinet placement.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Paula before we wrap it up for the day? I'm looking here. Everybody's saying it was excellent. They learned a lot. And, I'm not seeing any more questions. Last call for questions.
Feel free to email me, and Debbie will you send the recording, right?
I do.
Yeah.
And that's your email. I can also put
Uh-huh.
that into the messaging tomorrow as well.
Yep.
And great. Well, I want to thank you, Paula, once again for this great information and for sharing your expertise, your time with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for being here, and hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate your
You're
help.
welcome. You're welcome, Paula.